Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm back with another chapter from IB Business Management that we're going to be discussing and analyzing. This is chapter 1.4, Stakeholders. If you guys have not seen the previous videos, link in the description. And yeah, we're just going to get right into it. First off, also, I'm in my school's laboratory. That's why the change of setting and why there's like a shower in the background. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the new scenery. But let's get right into explaining this. So, what does this chapter deal with? It's chapter 1.4, stakeholders. So, stakeholders, what is a stakeholder? That's really the key part of this whole chapter. A stakeholder is any individual who is affected by the business and as a result of being affected by the business has an interest in what the business does. This can be a really large range of people. We're going to discuss, the different types. It goes further beyond this list, but these are the major types. There's also something that's important here. It's a smaller thing, but I think it's a key term that could be useful in an exam, which is this stakeholder concept. This appears in the chapter, which stakeholder concept is the idea of prioritizing a stakeholder or prioritizing stakeholders over shareholders. Now, you might wonder what's the difference. We're going to get to that. But they are different, and that is another thing. So stakeholder concept, prioritizing stakeholders over shareholders. All right, so there are two types, as is very famous in business management, two types, internal, external, stakeholders. Most things is internal and external, the two types. All right, internal. So what are the internal stakeholders? First, you've got your employees. Now, what are the goals of the employees? Well, they want better pay, they want good job security, they want good working conditions, right? So everything they do is going to be with the goal of getting those certain benefits. Every stakeholder group has certain objectives it wants to obtain. Next thing is the managers. Now, what do the managers want? They want also a large variety of things. But among those would be employment security, also being well paid, being given responsibilities of management, and good working conditions as well. Then we have the shareholders. So again, what's the difference between a shareholder and a stakeholder? Well, a shareholder is a type of stakeholder, but it's a very specific type. The shareholders are the ones who hold stock in the company. So we've talked about this in previous chapters. Say, you have someone who's bought a share in the company on the stock market. That's a shareholder. They own a share in the company. And so what do these people care about? First, they care about investment security, that their share is going to end up working out, that the money that they spend is going to come back as money for them. The share price, they want the share price to be increasing, and they want their dividends. And the dividends, that's basically some money that comes just from the fact of owning a share. Some of that money that goes to the shareholders. So just part of it is just an annual payment. It comes as part of the profits. That's also a more complicated thing, but we will, get into explaining that in the future. So those cover the internal ones. The shareholders, they want dividends to go up. They want share prices to go up. They want their investment to be secure. All right, now we have our external ones. So the first external type of stakeholder is a supplier. So a supplier wants regularity. That's a big thing. They want for the orders to be coming in often regularly. They want their payments to be coming on time. They want consistency. Customers want good value for their money. They want a quality product. They want consistent service. The government is more focused on general things. They want the company to pay their taxes. They don't want any tax dodgers. They want the company to be providing good outputs for the broader society, so also product quality. They want them to be offering lots of jobs to employ the citizens of that country or that state or that city. And they want just overall a good impact on society. So an unethical business, this is when the government's going to care. Other levels of stakeholders aren't really going to care about ethics as much, but the government might because that's talking impact on society. Then we get into special interest groups, also abbreviated as SIGs. These are things like banks, creditors, pressure groups, the local community, and employment unions or other trade unions or other kinds of things. I mean, also employment unions are that's going to fit into employees, but other kinds of unions, trade unions and things outside of the company. And so what do those, trade labor unions, those different kinds of special interest groups, what do they want? Well, each of them has their own individual interests that they're interested in. If it's a pressure group, let's take, good examples like PETA, the treatment of animals. Well, they might have a problem with a company that is not, that is testing their product on animals. Let's say it's, a makeup company that's testing the products on animals, well, then PETA might have a problem with them. Or if it's, an oil drilling company, well, then Greenpeace, which is an environmental organization, is going to have problems with them. A bank, for instance, will have problems if you're not paying back the loans that you took out from them. The local community might have a problem if, say, you've opened a plant. There's a famous case that I studied. That was actually part of my internal, but I think it's a perfect example of pressure groups in the local community. There was this Walmart who expanded into Mexico, and they opened a store on what was, I believe it was an old Mayan archaeological site. And that created some real uproar because basically the local community was not very happy that Walmart was building on this historical site. And so there was outrage, there were protests, there were all kinds of things basically saying that, Walmart's representing Western imperialism or American imperialism coming into our territory, and this can't be. So this was a famous case that I investigated as, kind of a part of my internal and just investigation and business management. And I thought it was interesting. It's very applicable here. Also, we have the key thing, final point here, is each of these investors is focused on an individual interest, as I was saying. So each investor only cares, or each special interest group only cares really about one thing. They're not looking at the business as a whole. They're looking at their specific thing, the environment, the treatment of their local community, whatever the case may be. Finally, we have competitors. Now, competitors are stakeholders. They're not actually involved. They're not owners. They're not buying anything. But what they do care about is fairness of prices, fairness of competition. They don't want, a competitor of Google doesn't want Google beginning to monopolize the whole industry. They're worried about things being fair. Now, this brings us to the next part, which is stakeholder conflict. Naturally, stakeholders tend to have conflicting interests. It's really hard for the shareholders and the employees to all want the same thing. The employees care about their conditions, their payment. The shareholders just want the company to be as profitable as possible. Versus pressure groups want the company to be doing something very specific that could harm its profitability or working conditions. So the stakeholders are always going to have some kind of conflict in there. So how do you resolve these conflicts? Well, there are a few methods of conflict resolution, 4 key ones that are outlined in this chapter that I'm going to try to explain as simply as possible. All right, first one's arbitration. Now, this one is within the company, so internal disputes, arbitration. This is, let's say you have a dispute between some workers and some managers where you're trying to manage that conflict between the workers and the managers with arbitration. So let's sit down, negotiate things, work on terms, things like that. So this would be, when you hear about union negotiations, for instance, between an employee, labor union and the company, that's a type of arbitration in a way. Next, you have workforce participation. This is basically just improving communication, trying to get the workers more involved in the process by saying you are also more an active kind of role of leadership here. You're not just our employees. We don't just order you. This is really a kind of part of, you're all part of this. This could be kind of seen as almost, reforming the corporate culture, saying this is going to be less of, top to bottom type thing. And instead it's a bit of a mix. Everyone's involved in the process. But that's the idea, is you just have improved communication. It's harder to have conflicts when you have really good communication. When everyone knows what everyone wants, everything's clear, and it's a lot easier to set terms than in a case where, especially, you see a lot of countries or a lot of companies where it is just top to bottom and you have kind of an autocratic leader at the top, which we'll talk about leadership styles in other chapters, but you have, autocratic leader at the top, and that autocratic leader can make everyone else feel like they're not heard because they aren't listening. They're only worried about their own priorities, and that can create conflict. So this, communication, making sure you have good communication, very important. Third is a profit sharing scheme. The idea of this is to reduce conflicts between workers and shareholders. The way it does this is basically you give every employee, instead of just their salary, they're also entitled to a certain percentage of the company's profits. This gives the worker kind of a more common interest with the other stakeholders in the business, especially the shareholders, because now the worker, normally the worker's only worried about the money they're making, but now the money they're making is connected to the money that the company makes. It's not just their guaranteed salary. It's now what are the profits of the company, which means they're going to work better, they're going to work higher quality, and they're going to work harder, because if they work harder, the company makes more money, and then they make more money. So that's another way for them to motivate, is to connect those things. And also it's better than just, because there are workers that work on commission, for instance. It's more than just a commission, because it's directly, how much money are they making from the overall success of the business. It's not just anything individual. It is the business as a whole. If the business is successful, they're successful. If you're paid on a salary, that's not always the case. or you're paid on an hourly wage. That's not the case. So it's an important distinction to have there. Finally, is a share ownership scheme. This is very similar to profit sharing. However, it's a bit different. The difference here is the workers of the company are given the right, if they're eligible, to buy shares of the company. This is actually pretty common practice in public companies, that you are allowed to buy shares of the company as an employee. They're allowed to do it in a certain future period. And typically they're given a discount on the share versus what the company would normally sell it for to anyone else who is buying a share. This can also be a motivator for the employees because first, when you get a share, that means you have ownership. You get a vote in the board of directors and those kinds of things. So you're turning into an owner. You're a lot more involved in the leadership process. You're not just an employee getting paid. You're now really part of that whole process. You're part of the ownership in a way. You do get paid though, because now also if the share price goes up, that benefits you. If the profits go up, that benefits you. If the dividends go up, that benefits you. So you're being paid in different ways. You're not just getting paid off of, the straight profits of the company. You're getting paid off of other things like, how is the overall success of the company, because the shares encompass that in a broader way than just what's the success of the company, financially speaking. Anyway, so that's a good way to kind of resolve conflicts between workers, managers, and shareholders, because you're basically aligning their interests. You're turning your employees into shareholders. And so that makes it so that it's easier for you to have kind of a more seamless process, and that you have your workers really invested. The same as price sharing, you have them more invested in the company and the company's success, because for them, the company's success is now their success and their profit. Anyway, so that's kind of a key. That's the final, the final points we have for share ownership. And then I guess a bit more specific, kind of final specification for that is typically what a lot of companies do is you're not buying them immediately. You're instead buying them at some point in time. Sometimes you give them price guarantees for, when you can sell it, whatever the case may be. And generally what you're doing actually though is you're not buying it. This is in some cases. Sometimes you're not buying the share at what its current price is, but you're buying it at a price that's lower than what the future share price is expected to be. So this gives more money to the company because obviously you're buying it at a higher rate. But then the idea is you will make that money back at some point because the share price will go up. And again, this gives you good incentive to work hard as an employee, because then if you work hard, the company has success, then you make money as an employee because now you have you're a shareholder in the business. And a lot of people, what they do is they'll actually take a cut out of their salary. So they'll use a certain percentage. They'll kind of put it into a separate account, and then that account can be used to buy shares in the company. That's a program that some companies use to make that system work. All right. Sorry for such rambling with the explanation, but we're now getting to the final point here, which is stakeholder mapping. So this is a form of business tool, I suppose, that divides the stakeholders into different groups, depending on what their interests are and what you as a business have to do with them to properly manage them. All right. So it goes on two axes. All right. Top axis you have here is interest. All right. Interest. And the side axis you have here is power or influence. All right. So you have low power, low interest, high interest. All right. So if you have someone who's low power and low interest, just keep them informed. Let them know what the company's doing, but they don't have much power and they don't really care. All right. Then you go over here. You have someone with low power but high interest. You keep informed and you have two-way communication. This would mean they're communicating well with the company. This would be, someone like a pressure group, for instance. That is, but we're not saying banks. We're going to say, an environmental group, for instance. This is someone that has higher interest in what your business is doing, but also doesn't have much power because they're not actually within the company. Then we have low interest, but high power. This could maybe be considered like customers. The customers really have a lot of power, but they don't really care. They just want a good product, right? Let's say you're Coca-Cola. Your customers have a lot of power. If they stop buying, you stop making money, but they also aren't like super invested in Coca-Cola because they could just go to Pepsi. That's maybe not the greatest example, but because often the customers of Coke hate Pepsi and vice versa. But you get the point. There are different kinds of that. But in that situation, what you want to do is you want to keep them satisfied. You want to keep your customers satisfied, for instance. because they could very easily switch. They have a lot of power, but they also don't care very much, and they could easily switch their activities and have a negative impact on you. The final over here is high influence, high interest. This would be, your managers, your shareholders, those people who are really focused on, they're following every activity of the company, and they also have a lot of power. So shareholder, if they're like, I'm out, they could really damage the company with that. And so what you have to do with these people, manage them closely. That is what this category is. Manage them closely is the final one. So high interest, high power, manage them closely. Anyway, so that is the end of this chapter. Thank you guys all for sticking with me and my explanations. I'm going to keep making more and more videos talking about all these chapters, explaining all of them to you guys. But I hope it is all understandable. If you have any questions, in the description. And again, if you want to see the rest of the videos, in the description as well. Anyway, hope you guys all have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you for watching.